Hi, and thank you for joining Agro 100 as we talk about the power of pH, nutrient availability, and Kalime. So who is Agro 100? Agro 100 is located in Joliet, Quebec, and since 1990 has been developing and marketing exclusive nutrients and biostimulants with proven effectiveness for optimizing the yield of field crops, vegetable crops, fruit crops, including potatoes, and hort crops in Canada, the US, and Mexico. Agro 100's production facility is located on 7.5 acres and consists of 2 state-of-the-art manufacturing plants and 5 warehouses. Our team in southwestern Ontario consists of Jade and I. In eastern Ontario, it's Audrey and Martin. Chris is the national sales director. Owen, research, development, and training. And Dean, who is the corporate sales for Western Ontario.
So today we're here to talk about pH, soil pH, and how we can best change that and how it affects nutrient availability. So first of all, what is pH? As you know, pH is a scale that measures the soil acidity or alkalinity, indicating the concentration of hydrogen molecules or atoms in the soil, with 7 being neutral. And ideally, we're looking in plant production for that range from 6.2 to 7.3, where most of the nutrients are most available for the plants. But while it's important to look at pH, the soil pH doesn't always tell the full story. So the balance of nutrients in the base saturation when you do a soil test can sometimes mask the pH or affect the nutrient availability. Especially in Ontario, we have some high magnesium soils. And so sometimes that high magnesium can affect the availability of other nutrients, or it can mask what the true pH of the soil is. So when we look at pH and nutrients, it's not always a question of just the pH of the soil, but really how much of each nutrient is available. So when we do get to those lower pHs, and we talk about we need to raise that up to make the nutrients more available, how does that work in the soil? So when you apply, in this case, it's a calcitic lime. The same holds true for a dolomitic. It just has some magnesium in there as well. So when we apply that to the soil, how does it work? So first, that calcium carbonate will slowly dissolve into the soil. It's when you look at the solubility factor of it, it's not very soluble in soil. It's a rock, so it takes a long time for it to dissolve into the soil in the first place. But when we do, we get that free carbonate ion, which then reacts with soil water, and it's again a slow process to create bicarbonate and a hydroxide ion. And that hydroxide is really what we're looking for, because then that hydroxide neutralizes the hydrogen ions that are in your soil. Further, that bicarbonate reacts with water again, and you make a carbonic acid, and another hydroxide is released, which again neutralizes some more H ions out of the soil. And eventually that carbonic acid, it's a weak, very weak acid, breaks down in the soil, becoming just water and carbon dioxide. And as I've been saying the whole time, like, it really is a very slow process in the soil. All of these reactions take a long time to occur. So when you apply a traditional calcitic or dolomitic lime to the soil, it can take from 1.5 to 3 years for this whole process really to occur. And interestingly, in a higher pH soil, as you notice, the arrows are both directions in these reactions. In a higher pH soil, the whole process can really work in reverse. So if you apply a lime in the soil, it won't do anything, or the soil can absorb carbon dioxide and work backwards through this process, releasing hydrogens and creating these other elements. So it naturally wants to bring itself to a balance around that 7. When we talk about Kalime, though, Kalime is quite different than other limes. And I'll turn it over to Jade to talk about that.
So before we get into exactly how Kalime is different, we have to start with how Kalime is made. So beginning locally in Bowmanville, Ontario, Kalime begins in the quarry as limestone, and everything's processed right there on site at St. Mary's. After it's crushed and it heads right to the kiln, it's then heated at a super high temperature, over 1500 degrees. And because it goes through this process of going through the kiln and being heated, it volatilizes And when it hits the air again outside of the kiln, it oxidizes and falls below the kiln into what we know as cement kiln dust. So once that goes through that process of being heated, there are potassium molecules, magnesium, sulfur. There's a lot of other nutrients in there as well that is too large to fit through the end screen of that process in the kiln. So that's also volatilizes, falls into the cement kiln dust. Once this piles below the kiln, it's then trucked away to what we call the legacy pile. And this is just kaolin that has been sitting there for quite some time, has better moisture. It's mixed with the legacy pile to make sure that the nutrient stabilization is great and that the moisture content is good for spreading application as well. To get into the functionality of it and exactly how Kalime is different, it's unique because of the final form is a hydroxide. So half of the calcium in Kalime is a hydroxide form already. It's not a carbonate like regular agricultural lime, like Owen has mentioned. This means that the 1.5 to the 3 years that he spoke about for that carbonate to break down into the soil has already been completed. So when you apply that Kalime, half of that load is already ready to get in and work at the pH right away. And additionally, it also has these nutrients that are available in there as well.
And really, just to touch on that, due to the calcium hydroxide content, when we talk about an ag index in lime, it's a calculation that OMAF puts out. It's based on calcium carbonate, but because there's so much calcium hydroxide in K-lime, we really, that calculation doesn't really work. So what we've done at Agri 100 is we've gone through a bunch of different tests. They do an incubation test really in the soil to see how it works, to get that real ag index of K-lime, how it really affects the pH in the soil, which gives us that real ag index of 72.5, which makes it more to the standard like regular lime.
So again, just to mention the nutrient, there is a nutrient value to Kalime as well. And this is exactly how it stands out additionally to the hydroxide to be different than other agricultural limes. So because of its final form, the nutrients that are in Kalime are ready to act right away because a lot of these nutrients are already in sulfate form as well. So you'll see that there's calcium, there's sulfur, there's magnesium, potassium, boron, zinc, copper, selenium. There's a little bit of everything in here. So you not only get your 50% hydroxide to alter your pH right away, but you also get all of these nutrients to get in and readily feed that plant as soon as it's applied. So how do we use that to the best of our ability? We have a hydroxide product. We also have the nutrients in there. Everything is together as one. So what do we do with that to use it to our best ability? So if your goal is to alter your pH, you need to go in at minimum 1.2 metric tons an acre. So if you're going to go in at that 1.2, you're going to get 767 pounds of calcium, 132 pounds of potassium, 61 pounds of sulfur, 26 pounds of magnesium, with little trinkets of selenium, zinc, boron, and copper as well. If your goal is not to alter your pH, you like where your pH is at, but you want to get the added benefit of using all this readily available nutrients, you can go in at a rate of 1 ton an acre or less. So if you go in at 1 ton per acre, again, you're not going to significantly change your pH, but you'll be able to get the benefit of the 639 pounds of calcium, 110 pounds of potassium, 50 pounds of sulfur, 22 pounds of magnesium, and again, just little trinkets of selenium, zinc, boron, and copper.
So where does Kalime fit with your growers? A big one would be dairy or beef growers that grow alfalfa. Kalime consists of 1/3 of the amount of selenium that a cow requires each year, so the nutritionist usually takes that into effect when making a ration. Kalime increases the protein and energy and also decreases the neutral detergent fiber in alfalfa. Short-term leases are a great place for Kalime because the lime is readily available as well as the nutrients, and you're fertilizing for this year's crop and not the future year's crops. Growers who add a phosphorus starter to wheat, 1 ton of Kalime provides enough potassium and sulfur for 100 bushel removal in wheat. Growers who apply a corn starter, adding a metric ton of Kalime to the field before corn reduces the workload in the spring by adding enough potassium and sulfur for 190 bushel corn crop. And then soybean growers as well, adding a metric ton of Kalime will provide enough potash and sulfur for a 60 bushel crop removal. So we've come up with a couple frequently asked questions that we get all the time, and we've got some answers for you as well. So the first one, does Kalime need to be incorporated? And the answer is not necessarily, due to its texture, because Kalime is more of a powder than a granular. It will dissolve into the soil if it's surface applied or if it's incorporated. Kalime is going to be surface applied in crop on alfalfa.
Are the nutrients in Kalime immediately available to the plant? Yes, absolutely. So most of the nutrients are in a sulfate form, which are readily available to the plant right after application.
How does the application rate of Kalime compare to regular lime? To adjust the pH, Kalime can be applied at the recommended rate of lime from your soil test report. You can base it on a 1-to-1 versus regular dolominic or calcitic lime.
How long can I store a pile of Kalime in the field? We see this one quite often. So once it's piled, Kalime is pretty weather resistant. However, over time, moisture can be drawn up from the ground into the pile of Kalime. So ideally, 2-3 weeks piled in the field is not going to affect the quality. If it is there a little longer and you start to see some, chunks that are building up there from moisture, you can also just drop down some Kalime, back drag it, loosen it up a bit, and then apply as well.
And what form of sulfur is in Kalime? All the sulfur in Kalime is in the sulfate form, so it's readily available to your plants. Acre 100 has a great app to help you out. There is information about Kalime and the data sheet for Kalime. There's also a calculator that helps you distinguish what kind of lime you are needing based on soil samples. And it also has all of the agri liquids on there with information on them and compatibility charts as well as recommendation charts. So definitely something to download. And thank you so much for joining us today. Please contact your local distributor for more information on how you can access Kalime.